We should get started, though, with a very special guest speaker. This is a gentleman who's pioneered the phenomenon that relationships are one of the greatest assets on the balance sheet of any organization, both large, small, and public. He consults with clients such as Siemens, Disney, KPMG, and 100 other global organizations. He's the author of 9 books. One of them you're now in possession of. When you sat down, you saw a copy of Relationship Economics, and he's also the author of a forthcoming Co-Create, which is an essential guide showing leaders how to optimize relationships across their organizations. So we've got a deep expert here on a very important topic. He's originally from Iran, and David Nour came to the US in 1981 with an interesting story. He had a suitcase, $100, and he landed at JFK with a badge around his neck that said, please put this guy on a plane to Atlanta. He speaks no English, okay? So, should be an interesting speech from David. Please welcome him to the stage.
What got you here won't get you there. That's the title of one of my favorite books by a guy named Marshall Goldsmith, in which he builds a pretty compelling case of that which has made you successful to date may or may not be what gets you to the next evolution of your business. If you've been selling for more than 5 minutes, I think you would agree that the way the customers buy has changed. And as you integrate what I've found out to be amazing products and services, your ability to engage and influence them is what's gonna win you that deal. It's gonna win you mind share and wallet share. So in the time that we have together, I thought I'd share with you some best practices from global clients like you heard, like Disney and Siemens and others who understand beyond their products and services, those relationships really are their sustainable differentiation. A couple quick housekeeping notes. If you're active on Twitter or social, that's my social ID, right? @DavidNour, and I'm using LESignite16 as a hashtag, and I'd encourage you to share if you deem it appropriate with your relationships. So I thought I'd tell you about my background. As you heard, I'm originally from Iran. I came in 1981 with a suitcase, $100, didn't know anybody, and literally didn't speak a word of English. Anytime I tell people I'm from Iran, it's critical for me to point out, I don't know any of these guys. Right? I've never driven a cab in DC. Come, my friend, come. And I'm pretty much willing to bet you, I don't know Ahmed that you went to school with, all right? These are common questions that come up. Somebody recently at a reception said, oh, you're from Iran, that's fascinating. I love Indian food. What do you say to that, right? Me too, go curry, right? The other question that comes up is, well, you're from Iran, so you must be an Arab. I'm like, no, not really. We're a little different. So I thought I'd let a good friend, don't get ahead of me, I thought I'd let a good friend, guy named Maz Jabrani, tell us a little difference between Iranians and Arabs. So watch this a second. Oh. Hold on, hang in with me. Let's go to about right here, I think. Hang on, stay with me. Let's see, if that doesn't work, we'll come back to it, right? Is it there? It's actually here, there we go. right? There you go, right? So if I break into amperes and meow, you know where that's coming from, right? A couple of other quick notes. I came to go to engineering school. A couple years of electrical, I think because my parents wanted me to, and I said that wasn't for me, so I went to undergrad at Georgia State, and then Emory for the executive program. I do live in Atlanta, and I don't know if you remember, we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary of Snowmageddon, right? You're going to meet my wife in a second. She's from upstate New York, and the first time I went to meet the in-laws, we got 7 feet of snow in 7 days. She laughs at this 2 inches, right? And for those of you who may know who Jon Stewart is, the late night comedian, I love his comment. Let me get this straight. The Weather Channel is headquartered right there in Atlanta. Didn't they know this was coming, right? So it's fascinating what we do to grocery stores, even with the threat of snow. I've spent most of my career in sales, marketing, business development. One of the first jobs was at Computerland. You remember the retail PC stores? Selling 286s. You remember those things? I'm pretty convinced your smartphone now will do more than those things did back then. And it was comical because I had to put people on hold and flip through a Persian English dictionary just to figure out what they said. And I learned English from Apple, IBM, and compact brochures, right? But I also sold about $40 million in a couple years. And I quickly figured out that I wasn't in the speeds and feeds business. I was fundamentally in that relationship business, right? So we'll talk more about that in a second. Then I went to the consulting route, PwC, and was president of a company in New York, raised a $10 million round, merged and sold that business. Then I spent 6 years at a private equity firm. And we bought and sold 110 different companies. So I've been through some of the integration challenges and I think opportunities that you're going through. And some of the genesis for my work now came from those days. Young family. If that's the subdued one, by the way, my wife is German descent, hazel eyes, blonde hair, and the kids look nothing like her, right? People who meet her ask her, what did you contribute? And she says, 9 months of rent. The Middle Eastern gene is very dominant in the household. And if that's the subdued kind of family photograph, here's a couple candid ones. By show of hands, how many have young kids or maybe grandkids at home, right? Do they ever do anything where you ask them what alien has taken over? I give them the blower to go blow the deck. And I come back a couple minutes later. He's got the thing facing himself just to see what it does. But I got to tell you, I love their sense of curiosity. And I'm a big believer that a lot that we need to know about relationships, we actually learn in kindergarten. You remember sharing toys? You remember being nice to other people? Right? But I tell you my story because I genuinely believe every one of us has a story. If you don't hear anything else from me today, you need to hear this. Every single day and every single account, you're asking them to trust you. What are you doing to give them a chance to get to know you? Because they cannot, they will not buy from you unless you go through the sequence. You ready? Earth-shattering. Here we go. Like me, know me, trust me, pay me. It works in that sequence. And people who try to circumvent it shoot themselves in the foot. Johnny Carson used to say there's a certain likability factor about all of us. If you're likable, they'll invest time to get to know you. If they get to know you, hopefully they can see that they can trust you. Only when they trust you will they buy from you. And not just another piece of technology, but information, credibility, repute. So Howard and team were very kind in sharing some background material with about kind of what you guys do. And here's the market segments, here's what they try to do, here's where we potentially fit. And they're not going to hear any of this. They're not going to internalize any of this. They're not going to apply any of this until they get a fundamental belief, a belief that you have a vested interest in their success. So I wonder, how many of you are doing this? How many of you are trying to fight headwind with where the client is trying to go? How many of you are selling products into a sliver of that company versus understanding what makes them tick? What moves them? And think about how you got here today. Omnichannel is not just a fancy term. It is real. And every one of my clients is fundamentally fighting. How do we create a great experience at every one of these touch points? How do we make sure it's seamless? How do we make sure that client that comes to the banking software from their tablet and for whatever reason gets interrupted and comes back later on their smartphone or on their desktop can pick up that experience and continue it? How do we remember information for people, not about them? When you remember information for people, it's for their benefit. When you remember information about them, it's for yours. This isn't intended to overwhelm, but it's over 940 different marketing automation technologies we've researched. By the way, spend 15 minutes in this city at the Consumer Electronics Show, and it highlights every business is either currently or soon will be under attack. You think this is just for the gaming industry? How many of you get something that looks like this? I know, you also have tablets and you read it on those, right? A few weeks ago, I get one of these in the mail. You don't know what it is. It's a virtual reality box from the New York Times, right? Literally, download the application, put your camera in front of it, and now you have a virtual reality story that you don't just read about, but it fundamentally transports you there. Yeah, David, that's a good example. It's an interesting one, but maybe it's just those guys. I'm active in the National Association of Corporate Directors. I'm on 2 privately held company boards. A couple months ago at the annual meeting, they hand out these things. These are all public, private, and nonprofit board members. And they have a booth where they walk them through the experience. Take a wild guess of what those board members do when they go back to your client companies and talk to the CEO. What are we doing to create immersive experiences? So this one idea is fundamentally evolving how they think about experiences, how they think about transporting their customers, their business to a different level of experience. Do you get this? Are you talking to them about this? Or are you still worrying about feeds and speeds? Drones. Drones were everywhere this year. And not just cute ones, but ones that will carry an individual. So what will that do to healthcare? What will that do to a lot of other industries? I don't know, but it's certainly worth a conversation. My point is you have to both manage the present. That quota, those numbers, those accounts are not going to go away. You have to manage the present, but you also have to find ways to invent your future. What does the evolution of your business, what does the evolution of your relationship in those accounts look like if it were to visit 12 to 18 months from now? So in many ways, you're going to have to innovate. I'll wait. By the way, I think that's my friend from Nigeria who keeps emailing me that he's got $2 million in an account for me. That's him right there. We finally got a picture of him. So most people I meet understand the importance of relationships. I want to spend a few minutes on their significance. I want to talk to you about how to invest in those relationships to deepen them in a more systematic, disciplined process. And I want to talk to you a few minutes about the power of engagement. Because we're seeing a fundamental difference between individuals and teams and organizations who focus on engagement first and foremost, in essence, relationships, and those who think of it as an afterthought. So, give me an impression of networking. Anybody in the audience, just shout out, what comes to mind when you hear networking? This is the interactive part of today. Conversation, people, what else? LinkedIn. I asked this question from a group of engineers. One of them sitting up front said, "You mean networking with other people?" Yes, just in case you're wondering, that's what we're talking about, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people say dispensing business cards, right? And Chamber of Commerce events and things that make most people go, right? Conversely, what do you think? Say again, shout it out. What do you hear? What do you feel when somebody says relationships? Anybody? Empathy. What else? Connections. What else? Understanding. Somebody said it. Trust. Friends, that John's never going to do anything to make me look bad. That Beth has got my back. So if networking is transactional and relationships are transformational, let me ask you a couple questions. Do you have contacts or do you have relationships? Do you go into these accounts and you just collect business cards, or you're nurturing and deepening those relationships? And for those of you in the room, I'm pretty sure you didn't paint on the gray hair. I know you get it. So I ask a lot of seasoned folks. You know a lot of people. Respectfully, so what? What's the value of all your relationships? How many of them return your calls and emails in 24 hours? How many of them are calling you to ask, how you doing? And what's going on with your business? In a deeper session, longer session, we do these set of exercises, one of which is map your success to date. Think about where you've been. Think about what you've done. I spoke to several of your colleagues who've been in this business 15, 20 plus years. They've been in this company for a number of years. So regardless of how you define success, if you were to graph your success over time, mine looks something like this. And again, I have a couple questions of you. If you've never had any dips, what lessons have you really learned? Because I think most people agree we learn as much, if not more, when we're struggling, when we have to find creative ways to overcome obstacles. By the way, what helped you overcome after an apparent low point? How did you overcome that abyss? Because if you learn that which makes you succeed, that the skills, the knowledge, the experiences, the behaviors that help you succeed, you start to build your resiliency. You start to build foresight. You've seen this movie. By the way, what was that proposal you were working on in January of 2005? Deals come and go, right? Who was the first manager who really invested in you? Who took you under his or her wings and taught you this business? Because relationships in many ways shape the graph that we become. They define us. We build best practices. We build models of behaviors we don't want to repeat or replicate. We admire those who are phenomenal storytellers. Or have you ever met somebody who walks into that account and they instantaneously connect with executives? What's their secret? So who have been the critical relationships along the way who've shaped the person that's you? More importantly, whose graph are you shaping? Who are you taking under your wings and saying, listen, Chris, you're brilliant, but as long as you're abrasive, nobody's going to hear that brilliance. You walk in and you show up and throw up at that account with all that you do and look, hey, you sit there, you be quiet. Let me tell you how great we are. That gets pretty boring pretty quickly. Whose graph are you shaping? And I would submit that your success is not fueled by these neat little boxes, but rather a web of messy relationships. So we got to think beyond individual accounts to their connections. Again, stick around this business for a while and you'll see it's incredibly incestuous. How many CIOs do you know that know a whole lot of other CIOs? How many CMOs do you know that have worked with a whole lot of other CMOs over the years? They all know each other. So your next best account, your next best opportunity is typically friends of somebody you already know. And it's hopefully somebody who knows you and likes you and trusts you. I was blessed to do some work with Jim Collins of Good to Great fame. And I love Jim's comment or question about whenever we're faced with a challenge or an opportunity, we often think about what should we do and how should we do it. Jim often brings up the who question. Who do you need? So this is an example of a relationship mapping technology we use in our consulting work. And if I'm trying to reach John Finnegan, who's CEO of Chubb Insurance at the bottom, I'm at the top. I know Raymond King, who's CEO of Atlanta Zoo, who knows Karen Williams, who's on John's board. In a very bizarre manner, the 6th degree of Kevin Bacon's 6th degree of separation really does work. Except in business, it's 3 degrees. You're typically 3 degrees away from almost anybody else you're trying to meet. So are you asking enough questions about who do I need? Who do I know? How do I start connecting the dots with a unique value add? We also build relationships. In my research, we found that we build relationships for 3 reasons. Think about it a second. We have 3 types. Personal relationships, right? These are fishing, golf, buddies, right? We pick them. They're discretionary. We pick them. They're a lot like us. They're like us, warts and all, right? Then there's functional relationships. Let's be honest, these are some people we put up with, right? It could be some clients, it could be some colleagues, but they're still safe because of the context of our work together. I may not want to hang out with you, but we'll work together, right? Most people have plenty of the first two. It's the last one they miss out on, which are the strategic relationships. By definition, strategic relationships elevate your thinking. They elevate your perspective. If you did $1 million in that account last year, strategic relationships can help you get to 3, get to 5. Most people have enough of the first two. They don't have nearly enough of the last one. We also, this is what I started saying earlier, we also build relationships for very specific purposes, right? We do them for a reason, right? I come in, I solve a problem, you pay me, we bring some technology, that's a reason. Put several reasons together and now you have a season. You've worked with somebody several times. You've worked with different functions, different parts of their organization. Again, plenty of people do these two well. It's the last one they miss out on, which are relationships for a lifetime. Have you ever worked with a client who's moved to several different companies? How cool is that, right? Not only you knew about their move, but when they go to the next place, they think of the problems they have and they call you back and come help us. Or have you seen people that move with the same manager or executive from company to company? Are they really going there for a little bit more money or a little bit more vacation? No, they go there because they have a vested interest. They know that person has a vested interest in their success, right? So how do you do this? How do you become more intentional? How do you become more disciplined? Sociologists tell us that when we meet somebody else, there are 4 things that subconsciously go through our minds, right? Think about the last time you met somebody for the first time. First one is you got to be able to relate, right? And the objection you got to overcome is, I don't trust you. And the more in this society of mistrust that we see, the more kind of guarded we become, right? So and there's all kinds of stuff that's written about trust. Here's a very simple definition. Credibility plus empathy. Credibility says you know more about my disparate data sources and how to bring them together and make it work than anybody else I know. Empathy says you can be quiet long enough to understand where I'm coming from. Put them together and you earn my trust. So here's a very simple request I have of you. Please stop telling people to trust you because they don't. Trust has to be felt, just like relationships. Have you seen people that say A and they do B? Demonstrate that trust by your behavior, by what you do, what you say you do, what you commit to doing, not just talking about it, right? Second area is discovery. You got to overcome, in essence, I don't need you. Listen, we got a lot of smart people. We've got a whole lot of different apps that do parts and pieces of our world, and I don't really need you. I would submit most of your relationships know what they want, not what they need. Let me say it again. Most of your relationships know what they want, not what they need. The difference is your consultative approach. The difference is you're asking enough intelligent, engaging questions to figure out not just what they're trying to do, but why they're trying to do it. What's the outcome that we're after? What's the business outcome we're after? Third area is this idea of advocating. So you have to overcome, I don't need your help. Listen, just give us the technology and we got smart people and we'll kind of get it done, right? Unless you become pretty succinct at articulating why Kofax, Lexmark software, you're going to get lost in the noise. And make no mistake about it, there's a lot of noise in your business. And I'm not sure, listen, I love that first mile campaign and positioning, that's great. But do clients really call it the first mile? Do they understand that? Do they relate to it? So you're going to have to take them on that journey with you. And you do that by articulating less about you, more about how they're better off because of the relationship. Last but not least, is this idea of supporting. How do I overcome satisfaction? Will I actually get the risk, right? The whole board agenda is risk. How do we mitigate risk? So how do I mitigate the risk of working with you? But who can tell me, again, shout out, who can tell me why we take pictures? Anybody, why do we take pictures? We want to capture the moment, not to put them on Facebook, right? We want to capture the moment. And what else do we do with pictures? Somebody said it. We share them, right? We want to capture the moment, we want to share it. You remember earlier I said who's shaped the graph? That's you. I'm a huge believer that we're products of the advice we take, right? We're products of the advice we take. So a mentor drove into me years ago. Kodak used to have a really clever phrase, Kodak moments, right? You remember Kodak moments? You go down to Disney, there's a fake Eiffel Tower, there's a plaque in the front that says it's a Kodak moment. So this mentor asked me a very simple question that has resonated with me over a decade later. He simply asked, David, what are you doing to create Kodak moments in your business? So I updated for you for 2016, what are you doing to create Instagram moments? What are you doing to create moments that not only your customers, your clients want to capture, but they want to share with others? Joe and his team made the impossible possible. Monica and that group are amazing to work with. Because if you're not doing that, you're not only leaving money on the table, you're working a lot harder than you have to. So how do you meet your goals, right? What's your game plan for reaching that goal? I got a number, right? I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. I've got some visibility to where that business is going to come from, but I don't really know. How will I get there? I've got to grow this territory. I've got to go deeper into that account. Whatever that goal may be, my question of you is, what's your goal? How will you get there? So we call it strategic relationship planning. It's a systematic, disciplined process. And the reason I like processes is because they're predictable, right? And I can create a pretty predictable outcome if I repeat this process step by step. So let me start, and it basically says, who do you know? How do you be selective? You cannot invest in everybody equally. So how do you become more selective in the ones you focus on? How do you become more strategic in those business relationships that are most relevant to what you're trying to get done? How do you nurture what we call pivotal contacts to really meet that goal, right? In essence, how do you become more intentional in the relationships you choose to invest in? Intentional, choice, and investments. So what happens if you don't do this? Well, your growth suffers. Whenever I go in an account and I see growth is flat, it's typically, right? I can look into the relationships. It takes you much more time, effort, resources to get there. Your acquisition cost, the retention of that customer becomes more challenging. Collaboration, you get New York trying to reinvent the wheel that Irvine figured out 6 months ago. But because we don't talk, we don't share those practices, right? Talent, it becomes harder and harder to find and keep great people. Innovation is really seen as an afterthought, not really forward thinking, forward leading. And if you think of relationship in terms of maturity, there's still some people that think, I don't need to do anything. Or you know what, I can be reactive. We got great products, let the products talk for themselves. Well, that'll get you to a certain place, the proverbial chasm. But if you want to get beyond that, it's your opportunity to be proactive, predictive, what we call intuitive and really visionary. Left-hand side, transactional. Right-hand side, transformational, right? So 5 stages to not just creating relationships. Have you ever had, or have you seen people that have a lot of coffee meetings and lunch meetings and they have nothing to show for it, right? There's a fundamental difference between relationship creation and bridging that to relationship capitalization. 5 stages, you gotta identify, you gotta relate, you gotta nurture, you gotta sustain, and ultimately you capitalize on it, right? The process is quantifiable. We can measure the process. It's teachable, right? It's not just, you don't have to be charismatic. You don't have to be the life of the party to do this effectively. It's scalable, right? And again, I'm going to show you your survey results in a second. And it's sustainable, right? We can do this without this merry-go-round of people coming and going in that account. So here's what it looks like. Covey says the same thing. Start with the end in mind. The books that you have, the entire first chapter is the top 10 reasons why most networking doesn't work. By the way, just as a reminder, networking is 1 letter away from not working. Just saying, right? It doesn't work because there's no purpose. There are no goals, there's no plan. What is the end result? What are the business outcomes you're after? Let's start with those. Next, we call them pivotal contacts. Listen, I deal with decision by committees all the time, right? But who's the one neck to choke? Who's the one executive that solving that problem, addressing that issue will be most impactful to? I'll call that a pivotal contact. That individual can, you've seen it, make 1 phone call, send 1 email, and get whoever's in your way out of your way. Who is that pivotal contact? Next, your existing relationship bank. Take a wild guess. You know a lot more people than you think you do. The challenge is, and you need to hear this, sociologists tell us an average individual can proactively manage about 100 to 150 relationships at any given time. Which ones? How do you know? And if you're just focused on the ones that are on your immediate pipeline, guess what? Somebody else is dating your girlfriend. You're leaving relationships neglected that are going to be critical to your success this year and beyond. What are you doing to nurture that relationship bank? The whole process starts with what we call relationship currency deposits. Investments you're willing to make, investments you're able to make, investments you lead with making. When I bring an SC in to architecturally design something, or work with their technical folks, or better yet, when I bring Grant in to one of my accounts to meet with their CMO, I don't think Howard would say no if you say, hey, I've got an executive, do I want to introduce him to some peon? No. But I've got an executive that I want you to meet. I don't think he would say no. So that's an investment in that relationship. I want to introduce you to another client that I think is struggling with the same things you are, and they figured out how to use it. It could be with us, it could be with somebody else's. But when you do this in a disciplined way, again, we call that strategic relationship planning. So let me give you, and again, the book goes into a lot more detail. Let me just give you one facet of it. I've read 108 books on business relationships. Would you agree that some of your relationships are more valuable than others? Right? Would that make sense? You've known them longer, or they may be more relevant to what you're doing. So I was looking for a scale that showed me that, right? Helped me figure out how to do that. I couldn't find one, so I built one. It's called the Relationship Value Pyramid. It's based on depth and relevancy. How well you know someone, and how relevant are they to what you're trying to do. I would submit at least half of everybody you know, we call situation. They come, they go. Nice people, it's the you never know stack of business cards, right? Have you been to an event where you get a whole bunch of business cards and you're like, I have no idea how this person's ever gonna, right? They're not in my accounts, they're not in my, right? You know what I coach people to do with the you never know stack of business cards? Be nice. Be nice. It's not that difficult, and people have very long memories, right? I remember you. You weren't very nice to me last time, right? Be nice. Your access to them is occasional, and it's a very collegial relationship. Next level, we call investment. You've actually invested time, effort, resources to get to know them. Maybe you've given a chance to give them a chance to get to know you. You've had a drink together after work. You've spent some more time, quality time outside of work together. Maybe they've met your significant other and vice versa. Your access to them is regular, and it's a very cooperative relationship. Next level, your portfolio. This is your think tank. These people know more about the ins and outs of e-commerce or mobile or analytics than anybody else you know. There are those great customers who you just genuinely enjoy spending quality time with, and they have deep subject matter expertise. Your access to them is frequent, and it's a very collaborative relationship. The very pinnacle of everybody you know, I would submit, are what we call 2 a.m.s. You really could call them 2 in the morning, and the first question is, are you okay? Your access to them is immediate, and it's a very interdependent relationship. Now, I'm a very bad barometer because this is what I do for a living, but I have 3,600 people in my active portfolio of relationships. 18 are 2 a.m.s. I've known them on average 15 plus years. They're past clients. So Enrique is one of my past clients at Disney. We worked together in the early 90s. I was with Silicon Graphics, SGI, right? He was at my wedding. He's now retired. Every time we're in Orlando, we go see him and Lucy. Every time they come to Atlanta, they come and see us. I've invested in one of his companies. He sits on the board of a company that I introduced him to. You get it? Very different level of relationship, right? By the way, 18 2 a.m.s, those are the people that come bail you out of jail. Now, one of my audience members asked me a very logical question. Do you really need 18 people to come bail you out of jail? I said, you never know when the first 17 might be busy or sitting in jail with you. We're talking about the quality of the relationships, right? Especially in this town. Another one of my audience members said, let me get this straight. These are the people you work with till about 5 o'clock, but then you're kind of done. The next group you may go have a beer with till about 7, but then you gotta I gotta go home. I don't know about your mom. My mom said don't call anybody after 9, right? And then you got your 2 a.m.s. Don't get caught up in the terms, but I think you would agree this is one way to delineate the quality of your relationships. And I learned years ago, you cannot improve something you don't measure. So how are you measuring the breadth and depth of those relationships you're building? Because they're not all created equal. So how do you get good at this? Well, you got to become an expert in your relationships, and by the way, their relationships. So when I'm helping KPMG, I'm asking them, tell me about that client. Tell me what that client is struggling with. When I'm working with Disney, Disney, by the way, you think cute and fun? Phenomenal, fanatical at understanding their customers. Do you know a family of four, the lifetime value of a family of 4 with the Walt Disney World Company is $50,000? So they've empowered frontline employees up to $2,500. If they have a bad experience, take care of it. Because it's not worth spoiling the lifetime value for one incident. They are very astute in understanding their customers. And that's exactly what you have to do. You want to succeed at this? Go get to know them and really understand their likes, their dislikes, their preferences, their prejudices, their business models. How do they make money? How are they losing money? If you're not talking to CMO about conversion, if you're not talking to CFO about their challenges, their issues, and regulations and compliance, you're still walking in there talking about speeds and feeds and, hey, my whiz-bang cool technology is better than yours. No disrespect to the technology, but I'm telling you, it gets lost in the noise. And the minute you start talking technology, as a business executive, I'm going to delegate you. And you're savvy enough to understand you don't want to get delegated or relegated or passed down to some IT guy who wants to do an RFP. You want to know what RFPs are? Beauty contests. Column A, column B, column C. By the way, in my experience, what they do speaks far greater volume than what they say they do. Right? Have you seen companies talk about our people are our biggest asset? First time the business dips, let's lay off 5,000 people. Or you walk in, don't point fingers at anybody now, be nice. Be nice, right? You walk into a company and I call them wall art. Have you seen this? Mission, vision, values, beliefs. You ask 10 different people what business they're in, you get 12 different answers. Huge disconnect between mahogany row and the mailroom, right? So open up your eyes, open up your ears, look at observable behavior. What do they do versus what they say they do, right? So what we've seen relationship economics do is produce results, right? First and foremost, and your CFOs always appreciate the fact that I bring up, it reduces your SG&A. It reduces your cost of doing business, right? It's expensive, newsflash, it's expensive to go on 6, 8, 10-legged sales calls, right? So relationships deepen, right? As you deepen those, you reduce your transaction costs. Number 2, it deepens loyalty, right? To a point, right? They'll forgive some things, but don't count on the relationship for your royally screwing something up and, oh yeah, no problem, right? It creates access to new opportunities. I love hearing from clients before an opportunity hits the street, right? I love referrals. I don't know about you. Somebody calls and, hey, I spoke to so-and-so and they said you should be somebody we talk to, right? It creates new opportunities. Last but not least, and again, I'm going to show you this with data, it institutionalizes relationships. Most companies I work with, probably very similar to this one, there are pockets of people who do this really well. The challenge is the pockets are not going to raise the bar on the entire organization, right? So you have pockets or teams or that office or, Wichita is struggling, but, Kansas City is rocking it, whatever the case may be, right? So you find pockets in companies. So let's talk about, most of you were kind enough, we put up this quiz, right? So we had 370 of you go and take the quiz. Let me show you some of the remarks from you and your colleagues, right? I have a strategy for managing my professional relationships. Only 25% agreed or strongly agreed. What are the rest of you doing? Just winging it? I consistently set aside time to assess the quality of my professional relationships. Only 15% strongly agreed. When I want to meet someone, I find someone in my existing network who will introduce me. 12%. Are you still dialing for dollars? Because again, I'm trying to tell you as politely as I can, some of my clients, the executive's assistants have assistants. And their job is to keep you out. So unless you're coming in through warm introductions or referrals, again, you're going to keep coming up against that headwind, right? When I make investments in my professional relationships, I have a clear purpose, 8%. Before you ask someone for help, you make sure that you've helped them first, 4%. And I'm not making this up. We take all of your results, we heat map them, and here's what you need to see, right? 1% of you are just starting out. You're just starting to build your relationships, right? 16% are sparking. You're kind of coming along. You're making some progress. 68% are steady as she goes, right? That's a beautiful thing. Who wouldn't want to have a conversation with Howard about things that are steady as she goes? 13% of you are sturdy. You're on it, you're rocking it, and then you literally have 2% that are just, when it comes to relationships, they're stars. And I would bet my engagement fee, if I went and looked at their territory, their accounts, their numbers, they are heads and shoulders above others. And make no mistake about it, most executives would love the steady, right? Steady as she goes. I'm trying to tell you, steady is status quo. Steady is right here, and if that's your aspiration, God bless you. But if you want to get beyond that, you're going to have to think about your relationships very differently. Case in point. Let me go online, and I want to show you a couple of things. I want to give you some again. I want to make sure this is practical, pragmatic, right? That's the first place I start every morning, CEO Express. CEO Express brings all the national and industry publications. They, in essence, aggregate them in one place, right? So from one place, I can look up business publications. I can look up industry publications. Great source of one place to look, right? The very next thing I look at. If I'm in town, I read it on paper. If not, there you go. What's happening? What's going on? You're topical. You can have an intelligent, engaging conversation with somebody about what's happening in the market and why Dow dropped 300 points. Next place I go, my portfolio of relationships. Where are they? By the way, I don't like to go across town for one appointment, much less if I'm going to get on a plane and go somewhere. So if I'm going to go to New York City, this is one of the tools we use, right? So I'm going to Manhattan. Who all do I know here? And let's say it would be great to reconnect with friends at Bank of America, right? So who do I know at Bank of America? Well, I know Ken Lewis, and Ken was at FIA Card Services, right? So here's some relationship mapping. Here's other relationships he may know. Family, education, membership, career, right? You ready? Boards and committees he's on. Nonprofits he contributes to. What money he's given where. Who else does he count as his inner circle? Compensation plans. By the way, I also get on LinkedIn, and I do my due diligence. Yesterday morning, I had breakfast with an executive. I do not go to a meeting without looking up his profile, looking up where he's tweeting about, looking up what the company cares about, because you have to be topical. This is selling 101 in the digital age. Are you doing your due diligence before you ever walk in? By the way, research after research after research shows 70% of those prospects are doing their homework about you before they ever talk to you. He'd watch my videos before they ever called. They're doing their due diligence on you, on this company, on your products and services before they ever talk to you. So if I pulled up your LinkedIn profile, what would I find? What would I see? If I look at what are you tweeting about, or how are you engaging with others, what would I see? What would I find? Because in essence, this is your digital footprint. And it is as critical as your repute. Right? It is as critical as understanding of kind of what you do and how you do it. So let's talk about engagement. Why Lexmark, right? I asked a lot of questions. By the way, I talked to 3 of your clients. I was in Manhattan. I went and saw one of them, right? Deep industry expertise, exceptional customer engagement. Whenever I see something like this, I'm really curious. What does that mean? Well, in our experience, customer service is not customer experience. Well, they needed that quote or that proposal and I got it to them. Well, good for you. Last time I checked, I'm pretty sure that's part of the job. Customer service is not customer experience. Customer experience is the holistic 360-degree view. What do they think about you? How do they perceive you to be? How's your SC when they walk in? How's the after-sales service? All of it is critical to their perceptions. And by the way, the reason it matters, right, without getting too deep, it actually pulls up the demand curve. I get 22 publications. 3 of them I read cover to cover every month. You ready? Fast Company, Inc., Harvard Business Review. This was an entire issue of Harvard Business Review. When you create exceptional engagement, you create demand. Who in here wouldn't want to get a call from a prospect that's got money, that has the problem your technology solves? The way you do that is you create amazing experiences and you create engagement. How? Easiest way is tech-enabled. By the way, back of the room, right? As you go out, there's a whole booth around You Go Social. They've done the work for you. They're aggregating content. They're creating great stuff for you. All you have to do is click on it and share that with your network. So I want you to go see them. I want you to spend some time with them while you're here. And not just good to know about it. I know how to swing a golf club. Doesn't mean my scratch is getting, my handicap is getting any better. You actually have to do it. This isn't a spectator sport. So again, they have great technology. Technology is one way to create that engagement. Second area is product or service design, right? How easy are you to work with? How easy are you to integrate? How easy are you to really understand and bring in their scenario? Marketing communication. How effectively are we communicating where and how we fit? You know the most impactful way to create engagement? Yeah, the human interaction. You get on a plane, get in your car, go see them. By the way, what do most offices have? Stiff chairs. What do most coffee shops have? Comfortable couches. Guess what? When people are comfortable, they'll share more with you. Get them out of that office. Get them, in my culture, right, having tea, it's not about the tea, it's about that time together. Recent trip to China, you're gonna cringe. 4-hour lunch. We talked about business for 15 minutes of it. Those of you who've done this, you know that's how it works. Your genealogy, your culture, right, where you've been, what you've done matters a lot more than what product or service you bring. The exact same thing in the Middle East. In the book you'll read, I interviewed a Marine, his name is Mac McClellan, and he helps companies establish a presence in the Middle East. And I said, Mac, what's the biggest mistake most American companies make when they come here? And he says they think they can parachute in. And they completely forget that it's a relationship culture, right? So that human interaction is fundamentally the best way to build great engagement. To succeed in engagements, you need 3 things. You gotta be credible. If your stuff doesn't work, you might as well forget my keynote, right? If your stuff doesn't work, we're not gonna get anywhere. It's gotta be credible, right? So big pressure on the product team and the technology team to make sure the stuff works, right? Number 2, you gotta be relevant. You gotta be up on it. Again, the marketing team has done a really good job, and here are the pain points of these industries, from banking to insurance to healthcare. What are our solutions? Where do we fit in? Where should we have some of those conversation points, right? So you have to be relevant. Last but not least, it's gotta be contagious. By show of hands, how many of you did the ALS ice bucket? Right? Big number of you. You wanna know why? It was contagious, right? It was fun. Everybody did it. We did it with our Cub Scout and Boy Scouts, and we did it at work, and we did it at neighborhood, and right? You wanna see results? They raised $125 million in 1 year, where the previous year they had raised 13. Engagement that's contagious grabs people, brings them in. In essence, what you need to do is you need to build an emotional connection before, during, and after. What are you doing with those prospects before you ever go see them? Do you send them anything? Do you engage them online? Do you follow them? Do you understand where they're coming from and what they're struggling with? When you're there, do they see you as a sales guy? Let's get rid of him or her as quickly as possible. Or do they see you as that advisor? Could you charge for that next sales call as an advisor? Because if you're not walking in as a peer and if you're not having those peer level conversation, guess what? You're going to get delegated. You're going to get relegated. And after you leave. By the way, how many emails do you get a day? I get 200 to 300. How many personal handwritten notes do you get a day? How many do you send out? I have some in my briefcase. I have some in my car. We all have dead time throughout the day. How long does it take you to write a personal handwritten note and put that in the mail? Because what it does is it elevates you above the noise from everybody else that goes through their front door. It's a small gesture that has huge impact. And I would submit to you, stories spread value. Stories, whether it's content or experiences or conversations, whether you buy it, you share it, create value. You want proof? Watch this.
The relationship between India and Pakistan is one that has seen a lot of lows.
It's stressful, it's tense. It's either it's not improving and it's getting worse.
It's only been 60 years that we have been apart. Before that, we were living harmoniously together. I think all the strife would go away. You took away the Papa in the middle of the two countries.
It saddens me that we have this neighbor that we can't even go visit.
It's perception of getting invaded and that's the bad guy. And when they actually meet you, you realize you're one just like me.
Mainly because there's no communication. They're near us, but we have no access to them. And it's sad. Because together I think we would do wonders.
Creating an environment where young people can exchange ideas, thoughts, gestures, and take away that communication gap that exists. If I have any opportunity to go to India, I'll surely go there. The whole idea of actually touching hands, it's like communicating with each other without words. I mean, that action speaks louder than anything else.
This is what we're supposed to do, right? We're going to take minor steps so that we are going to solve bigger issues.
It is more about, how similar we are as opposed to how different we are.
Togetherness, humanity, this is what we want. More and more exchange.
What did you see? Not a trick question. What did you see? You saw human connection. Did you hear about sugar water? Did you hear about obesity problems? You saw an emotional connection to a brand. By the way, last time I checked, over 2 million views of that video. Because it creates an emotional connection to that brand. And you need to do the exact same thing with your clients and with your prospects. Doesn't have to be a clever ad, never has to be expensive. It does unequivocally have to be thoughtful. So let me wrap up with 10. Over the years, I've captured 10 relationship impact moments in your accounts, in your daily activities. You ready? Number 1, somebody said it when we first started, empathy. You have to walk in their shoes. What are they struggling with? What are they challenged with? What are they trying to fundamentally accomplish? Walk in their shoes. Forget that you're selling software or technology for a minute. Walk in their shoes. What business are they in? What business are they trying to be in? Number 2, engagement. You got to show up. Put this damn thing away. Because while you're doing this, you're not paying attention to them. Turn it off, put it away. That email will be there after the meeting. Be there, be present, be centered, focus, engagement, show up. 3, adaptability. Tailor it. Tailor it. Even though they're the exact same account as the one you saw in the last week and the one before, the week before, and the one before the last month, adapt it to their needs. That's when they feel heard. That's when they feel you get my business. That's when they feel you get me. Tailor it. Perspective. Change their lens. Change their lens. Change their view. Change their view of what are they doing, why they're doing it. I believe in every relationship, at a certain amount of pushback is actually healthy. Howard says, I want to do this. My first question is going to be, why? That's interesting. Why are you thinking that? And where are you going with that? And tell me why that's important. Change their perspective. Conviction. It's good to be here today. I want to thank you for your time. Would you not just say, shoot me if that's the way I opened? Right? Oh my God, right? Death by PowerPoint. How many of you walk into an account where if I was there, I'd be like, is this thing on? Right? Is there a pulse here? Bring conviction, bring passion. If you don't believe in this stuff, at the risk of never being invited back, maybe it's time for you to go do something else. You know what my litmus test is? That alarm clock in the morning. If you get out of bed before it goes off, you're excited about tackling the day and it doesn't feel like a job, versus hitting the snooze button once or twice or 5 times and, oh, good God, I don't want to get up. But enough about this morning. So, I saw some of you partying last night. Collaboration. Collaboration for sake of collaboration is a waste of time. I can't stand for us to have a conference call for a meeting that's coming up, for a meeting. Collaboration for sake of collaboration is a waste of time. Collaboration to make the end result stronger is priceless. Meet less often, but meet more impactfully. Selflessness. Reduce your self-interest. One of my dear friends is the former CEO of Siemens, right? He's no longer in that job. To this day, every 6 weeks or so, we meet at a coffee shop. And I just sit there and listen. Am I Dr. Phil? No. But as you go up in the organization, it becomes lonely. And I don't have an agenda other than listening and asking, what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And tell me where you're going with that. And why is that important to you? Reduce your self-interest. Am I talking about my consulting and speaking and coach? No. Sit there and just listen. Accountability. I have 0 clients who are interested in finger pointing. I have 0 clients who want to hear from you. That wasn't us. That was your hardware vendor. Own it. If you don't make mistakes, you're not human. It's not the fact that you made a mistake. It's what can you do with it? What should you do with it afterwards? You know what the right thing to do is. Do it the first time. Own it. Candor. Say what others won't. Unfortunately, as you go up in the organization, you're surrounded by a whole lot of yes people. Yes, Howard, that's a great idea. Yes, Brian, you should do that. Yes, we should do that. And then we make a $10 million mistake. Oh, we shouldn't have done that. Say that up front. Say what others won't. If your client is about to make a big mistake, say it up front. Up their game. Improvement is all about up their game. I ask a lot of people, how is that relationship better off because of you? And they tell me how great they are. I said, that's not what I asked. How is that relationship better off because of you? So, that's the website. There's all kinds of position papers and infographics and things you can download. 3 ways to learn more. Again, Howard and Company were kind enough to buy the books. Read the book. right? A lot of good ideas, a lot of case studies. People tell me afterwards, David, so see you there talking about these ideas. So hopefully I've carried my voice, read the book. There's a monthly newsletter on the website. We call it Rendezvous. This is what it looks like. If you haven't noticed, I'm not shy or quiet. So I recently wrote an article, What Happens When It's Broken at the Top. I had 6 clients mad at me because they thought I wrote about them. So the next month I wrote How to Fix Damaged Relationships. I am not stupid, right? That's what it looks like. We've also built a pretty nifty little private community called NourNet. It was great to see a few of you went under the resource section of the website and you've already joined it. But every week it kind of looks like this, and people have found clients. People have found employees through this, so it's just a great private, intelligent network. And every Tuesday morning, I'll send you a relationship tip. So feel free to check that out. And you also can see geographically where people are located. The 1% rule says improve by 1% a day, and in 70 days, you're twice as good. Mathematically proven, improve by 1% a day, and in 70 days, you're twice as good. What's your 1% for today? What will you choose to do better tomorrow than you did today? I don't want anything from you. What I want for you is to never stop growing. Because the day you stop growing, you become complacent, and the day you become complacent, you're no longer relevant to your biggest asset, which is your portfolio of relationships. I started with pictures, and I thought I'd end with pictures, and a quote that means a lot to me. I carry it with me. It's also the last page of your book. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. Sometimes they come together in a single encounter. The late Thurgood Marshall, the Supreme Court Justice, was once a young lawyer and argued the Brown versus the Board of Education case, which ended the injustice of legal school segregation. He once said, "People are people. Strike them and they will cry out. Cut them and they will bleed. Starve them and they will wither away and die. But treat them with respect and decency. Give them equal access to levers of power. Attend to their aspirations and grievances, and they will flourish and grow and join together to form a more perfect union." Never forget, you're not just in the technology business, you're fundamentally in the people business. Thanks for having me.